Look at me.
I am no one worth looking at, my king.
Then why can't I stop?
She was born to wear a crown of sapphires. Instead, she wore a servant's plain gray wool and kept her eyes on the marble floor of a palace that had once belonged to her own bloodline. She would be chosen, she would be loved, and one day, the truth buried beneath her borrowed name would rise like fire through the desert dark. But not yet. Not while the Alpha King's enemies still hunted the last daughter of House Mehr. Not while a single pendant, hidden beneath her collar, could end her life the moment it was seen. She had made herself a vow the night her family burned. No one will ever know who I really am. She did not know that a king was about to break every rule he had built his throne upon, just to keep her close. The whip cracked once against the tile before it ever touched her skin, and Shirin still flinched as if it had. "Kneel," said Master Rostam, the palace steward, his voice thin with the particular cruelty of small men given brief power. "You spilled the king's wine. You will kneel and beg his mercy, or you will feel the lash." The hall of fire lamps had gone silent. Dozens of servants lined the walls, eyes down, breath held. Above them, the ceiling's turquoise tilework caught the lamplight in fractured blue, like water frozen mid-fall. The last beautiful thing, Shirin thought, that she might ever see. She did not kneel, not because she was brave, because 11 years ago, a woman with her same blood had knelt before men just like this one, and it had not saved her. "I am Shirin, a servant girl," she told herself, the lie so old now it lived in her bones. "I am no one. I have no father to avenge, no mother's voice waiting in my memory, no crown that once sat upon this very head." But her hand rose, helplessly, instinctively, to the leather cord at her throat, where a sapphire pendant lay hidden beneath gray wool. A small, unconscious motion. No one saw it, except one man. The doors of the hall of fire lamps did not open. They were thrown open, torn by a wind that smelled of pine and blood and something older. Wolf. Alpha King Kasra entered the way storms enter a valley. Without asking, he was tall in the way mountains are tall, dark hair pulled back from a face carved by war and grief, eyes the pale gold of a wolf still living just beneath his skin. The court fell to their knees the instant he crossed the threshold. Rostam's whip arm dropped as though the air itself had gone heavy. "Who?" Kasra said, voice quiet in the way that made stronger men tremble, "gave you permission to raise a hand in my hall?" "My king, she disrespected the crown. She spilled." "She is trembling," Kasra said, "and you are smiling." "I find I trust the trembling." He crossed the hall. Every noblewoman present, including Lady Nahid, daughter of the Alpha Lord of the Southern Ranges, dressed for a marriage negotiation she believed was already won, watched in open disbelief as the Alpha King stopped in front of a servant girl in gray wool and knelt whip-height eyes to her downcast face. "Look at me," he said. "She should not have. A servant does not command a king's gaze. A king commands hers." But something in his voice was not command. It was almost request. She lifted her eyes. For one unguarded second, Kasra's breath caught. His wolf, silent for 3 long years since his father's death, stirred beneath his ribs like something waking from a long, cold sleep. "I know you," some buried instinct whispered. "I have always known you." He did not understand it. He would spend the rest of the story trying to. "She serves under my protection now," he said, straightening, addressing the hall without looking away from her. "Any man who raises a hand to her again answers to me." The court gasped. Lady Nahid's fan snapped shut. A servant girl, chosen, publicly, over every noblewoman in the room. Shirin's heart pounded, not with gratitude, but with terror. "Attention is death," she thought. "He has made me visible, and I cannot afford to be seen." He found reasons to see her. That was the part that confused him most. 3 days after the Hall of Fire Lamps, Kasra told himself he was simply inspecting the royal gardens when he found her kneeling among the damask roses, tending a wounded falcon with hands far too gentle for a servant's calluses. "You've been assigned to the aviary now," he said, though he was the one who had assigned her there. "By your order, my king." She did not look up, though I confess I do not know why. "Neither do I," he almost said. He watched her instead, the careful way she wrapped the falcon's wing, murmuring something in a dialect of old court Persian that servants were never taught. She caught herself mid-word and switched to common speech, but he had heard it. "Where did you learn the old tongue?" he asked. Her hands stilled. "A song. Servants sing many things they don't understand, my king." A lie. He knew a lie by scent, the way his wolf could smell fear beneath perfume. But he let it pass, because pressing her felt, absurdly, like cruelty. "Your hand," he said instead, nodding at a burn scarred across her palm, old, deliberate-looking, shaped almost like a struck flame. "How did you come by that?" "A kitchen accident, years ago." Another lie. He let that pass too. That night, a healer arrived unannounced at the servants' quarters with salve for a small cut on her thumb that Kasra had noticed only because he'd been watching her hands far longer than any king should watch a servant's hands. She never learned who sent the healer. She suspected. She said nothing. 2 weeks later, a desert storm buried the palace in cold that cracked stone. Shirin was found near the outer wall, delivering grain to the stable hands, her thin shawl useless against the wind. Kasra removed his own fur-lined cloak without a word and set it across her shoulders. "My king, I cannot. You will wear it," he said, "or you will freeze, and then I will have to explain to my council why I let a servant die of stubbornness." She almost laughed. The sound surprised them both. Bright, unguarded, gone as quickly as it came, as if she'd forgotten she still knew how. He watched that laugh land somewhere in his chest and stay there. "This is dangerous," he thought. "She is no one. I am the Alpha King of Ashkevan. There can be nothing between us." But that night, alone in his chamber, he found himself thinking of damask roses, and old court Persian, and a scar shaped like fire, and his wolf would not settle. The betrothal negotiations with House Nahid resumed at the next new moon, and the entire court buzzed with the certainty of an announcement. "A political marriage secures the southern border," Grand Vizier Farhad reminded Kasra in the council chamber, his voice smooth as poured oil. He was an old man with a courtier's smile and eyes that missed nothing. "Your father understood that love is a luxury kings cannot afford. My king, I trust you remember the lesson." Kasra's jaw tightened. He remembered. His mother had died believing his father loved her, and his father had let political convenience end her life to seal an alliance instead. Kasra had been 12. He had sworn over her grave that he would never let his heart choose anything a kingdom could not survive. "I remember," he said. "Set the ceremony for the next full moon." He told himself it changed nothing. That evening, restless, he walked the palace's inner corridors and heard something he wasn't meant to hear. A girl's voice, alone in the old library, reading aloud from a scroll of Royal Mehr poetry that had supposedly burned with the rest of that dead dynasty's records. "Shirin." He stood in the shadow of the doorway and listened as she read a verse in a voice thick with grief she didn't know she was showing. "Though the fire took the roof, it could not take the name. Though the fire took the throne, the blood remembers." "Where?" Kasra said, stepping into the light. "Did you find that scroll?" She startled so violently the scroll fell from her hands, and in catching it, her collar slipped, just enough. A flash of blue against her collarbone, gone in an instant as she yanked the fabric closed. But he had seen it, a sapphire, old, deep as midnight water, and carved, he was almost certain, though the light was dim and his heart was suddenly loud in his ears, with the shape of a great mythic bird. Wings spread, fire beneath its feet, the simorg, the royal emblem of House Mehr. "That is a beautiful pendant," he said carefully, watching her face drain of color. "It was my mother's," she said, too quickly. "Nothing more. A servant's trinket, my king. I did not know servants owned sapphires. I did not know kings noticed necklaces." Her chin lifted, some old fire flashing behind her fear, and for a moment he saw not a servant at all, but someone who had once expected to be obeyed. He should have pressed her. He should have summoned the Grand Vizier, ordered a search, demanded the truth. Instead, he found himself saying, "Keep your secrets then," and walking away with his wolf howling inside him that he had just lied to himself. "She is hiding something enormous," he thought, "and I find that I do not want to know it yet, because I am afraid of what it will cost me to know her at all." Behind him, Shirin pressed her hand over the pendant and closed her eyes. He saw it. He saw the simorgh. If he understands what it means, I am already dead. Prince Ilyas of the Eastern Steppe Pack arrived for the betrothal ceremony with gifts, wine, and wandering eyes. He found Shirin in the rose garden on the second night of the visiting delegation and made the mistake, as Kasra would later think of it, of standing too close, laughing too warmly, reaching to tuck a fallen strand of hair behind her ear. Kasra crossed the garden before he had decided to move at all. "Prince Ilyas," he said, and his voice carried a growl beneath the courtesy that made the visiting wolf's shoulders stiffen. "The council awaits your father's signature, now. Surely a moment more, with such charming company." "Now," Kasra said, and something ancient and territorial rippled beneath his words, something every wolf in the garden felt in their marrow. Ilyas bowed stiffly and left. Shirin stared at him. "My king, he meant no harm." "I don't care what he meant. You cannot simply—" She stopped herself, startled by her own boldness. A servant did not correct a king. Cannot simply what? His voice had gone low, rough at the edges. He stepped closer than propriety allowed, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze, close enough that his wolf pressed hungrily against his ribs, desperate for something Kasra refused to name. "Say it. You cannot simply decide who may speak to me," she whispered, "and who may not. I am not yours to guard. And yet," he said quietly, "I find I cannot stop." The silence between them filled with the sound of the fountain, the scent of night jasmine, the unbearable nearness of two mouths that both wanted, badly, to close the distance. He didn't kiss her, not yet. But his hand rose and brushed, achingly gentle, along the same strand of hair Ilyas had touched, as if reclaiming something, as if apologizing, as if promising. "I am to be betrothed within the month," he said, almost to himself. "I know this. I have accepted this since my father died. So tell me, servant girl, why does the thought of it feel like losing something I never let myself have?" She had no answer that wouldn't unravel everything, so she gave him the only truth she could afford. "Because some things choose us before we choose them, my king. And some things must be refused anyway." She left him standing alone among the roses, her pendant burning cold and heavy at her throat, her heart shattering with the effort of walking away from the one person who had ever looked at her and seen someone worth protecting. The night of the betrothal feast, the hall of fire lamps blazed with 1,000 candles, and Lady Nahid stood radiant in gold silk beside the throne, waiting for the Alpha King to speak the ritual words that would bind their houses. Shirin was not meant to be in the hall at all, but a wine jug shattered near the musicians, and servants scrambled, and somehow, some cruel trick of fate, she found herself directly in Kasra's line of sight as he rose to speak his vows. He looked at Lady Nahid. He opened his mouth and found he could not say the words. The silence stretched. Grand Vizier Farhad's smile faltered. Lady Nahid's father half rose from his seat. Kasra's eyes moved, helplessly, across the hall, and found Shirin, frozen near the wall, pendant hidden, eyes wide with a fear that had nothing to do with propriety, and everything to do with what she saw happening in his face. "My king," Lady Nahid prompted, quiet, humiliated. "Forgive me," Kasra said, and the words came out rough, almost broken. "I cannot complete this vow tonight." The hall erupted into scandalized whispers. Farhad's composure cracked for one dangerous instant. A flicker of fury quickly smoothed away. Lady Nahid fled the hall in tears. Alliance negotiations that had taken a year to build lay in ruins. Kasra didn't chase her. He crossed the entire hall instead, past nobles and guards and his own furious council, until he stood before a servant girl in gray wool who had just watched him detonate his own kingdom's politics without explanation. "Ask me why," he said. "My king, you shouldn't. Ask me why. Why?" She breathed. "Because," he said, and his hand rose to cup her face with a tenderness that undid 3 years of careful, grief-armored control. "I have been at war with myself since the night I saw your eyes in the Hall of Fire Lamps, and I am tired of pretending I don't know what my wolf has known since the beginning. I don't know who you are. I don't know why you hide behind a servant's silence, but I know I would rather burn every alliance in this kingdom than spend one more night watching you walk away from me." He kissed her. It was not gentle. It was the kiss of a man who had spent years building walls and had just watched every one of them fall in a single moment, and Shirin, who had sworn, on her family's ashes, that she would never let herself be seen, kissed him back like a drowning woman finally allowed to breathe. Neither of them saw Grand Vizier Farhad standing in the shadowed archway, watching, his expression sliding from fury into something far colder, something like recognition. He had seen that scar-shaped burn on her palm once before, 11 years ago, on the hand of a screaming child he had dragged from a burning palace and told his men to finish killing. The Mehr girl lived, he thought, ice spreading through his chest. She has been standing in this palace all along. Farhad did not act immediately. Men who survive palace intrigue for 40 years do not act immediately. Instead, he watched. He watched the Alpha King break his engagement, watched the servant girl move through the palace with new color in her cheeks, watched Kasra find excuse after excuse to summon her, for the aviary, for the library, for council meetings she had no place attending, simply, transparently, because he wanted her near. Farhad watched, and he waited for proof, and 3 nights later, he had it. He bribed a laundress to search Shirin's small chamber while she attended the king. What the laundress found, wrapped in oiled cloth beneath a loose floor tile, was worse than proof. It was a sealed letter, its wax stamp broken, but still legible, the royal seal of House Mehr. A letter written by a dying king to his daughter, 12 years old, hidden away by a loyal nurse the night the palace burned. "My Roshanak," it read. "If you read this, I am gone, and you are the last of our line. Trust no one who wears the vizier's colors. He smiled at your mother the same night he opened the gates to her enemies." Farhad burned the letter himself, alone, by candlelight, his hands steady even as his mind raced through 40 years of careful lies. He had told the old king's court that House Mehr's bloodline was extinct, wiped out by a rival kingdom's raid. He had told King Kasra's father the same lie years later, when negotiating for the very lands House Mehr once ruled, lands Farhad had quietly folded into his own family's holdings ever since. If the last Mehr heir lived, if she was recognized, every treaty, every seized estate, every lie of the last decade would collapse, and with it, his own execution would follow as surely as sunrise. She must disappear, he decided, before the king discovers what he has fallen in love with. He went to Kasra that same night, smiling his courtier's smile. "My king," he said, "I have troubling news about the servant girl you've taken such interest in." Kasra's expression sharpened. "Choose your next words carefully, vizier. I would never accuse without proof." Farhad's eyes glittered. But ask her, my king, where a servant girl learned to read old court Persian. Ask her about the scar on her palm. Ask her, he said, voice dropping, almost gentle, almost cruel, what house her mother's pendant truly belongs to. He left before Kasra could answer, satisfied he had planted exactly the seed he needed, not to save the girl, but to force the king's hand before Farhad's own crimes could surface. Kasra found Shirin in the garden, beneath the same roses where he had first touched her hair. "Show me the pendant," he said quietly. Her whole body went still. "My king, show me." Trembling, she drew the leather cord over her head and placed the sapphire in his palm. He turned it toward the moonlight, and there it was, wings spread, fire beneath its feet. A symbol he had seen only once before, carved into the ruins of a palace his own father's alliance had once quietly profited from. The Simorg, House Mehr. "You're her," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "The lost princess. Everyone believes you're dead. Kasra, say it." His hands were shaking now, not with anger, but with the vertigo of an entire world rearranging itself around him. "Say your real name." Tears slid down her face, but her chin lifted, and for the first time in 11 years, she spoke it aloud. "Roshanak," she said. "Princess Roshanak of House Mehr, daughter of a murdered king, the woman you were never supposed to love." He didn't let go of the pendant. He didn't let go of her. That, more than anything, was what broke her. "Say something," she whispered, when his silence stretched too long to bear. "I am trying," Kasra said roughly, "to decide which truth I am more afraid of. That I have fallen in love with a woman who lied to me for months, or that I would have fallen in love with you anyway, even if you had told me the truth on the very first night. You should hate me." "I have spent 3 years believing love makes a king weak," he said. "I watched my father let politics kill my mother, and I swore I would never repeat his mistake. And then you walked into my hall in gray wool and refused to kneel, and I have been unraveling ever since, long before I knew your name was Roshanak instead of Shirin. The name changes nothing. You are still the only person in this kingdom who has ever looked at me like a man instead of a throne." "Farhad knows," she said suddenly, urgently. "He must. Why else would he send you to me tonight?" Understanding hit him like a physical blow. "He didn't want me to protect you," Kasra said slowly. "He wanted me to expose you, to force your identity into the open before you could gain any allies. He needs you discredited or dead before the council can question him." "Why would the Grand Vizier fear my bloodline?" Kasra's jaw tightened as pieces he'd never thought to question suddenly aligned. Farhad's swift rise after House Meher's fall, the lands he'd acquired, the alliance he'd brokered on the ashes of an extinct royal line. "Because," he said, "I think Farhad didn't just fail to save your family. I think he sold them." Both their heads turned. Fire lit the northern sky beyond the palace walls. Not accidental fire, signal fire. "That's the vizier's private guard," Kasra said, going cold and still in the way that made him every inch the Alpha King. "He's not waiting for the council. He's moving against you tonight. Then let me help you stop him." "Roshanak, I am not a servant hiding from my past anymore," she said, and something in her voice had changed. Steadier, older, carrying the weight of a bloodline that had survived fire once already. "I am the last daughter of House Mehr, and I know exactly what Farhad is more afraid of than my death. He's afraid of my witness. I saw his face the night my father died. I have carried that memory for 11 years, believing no one would ever believe a servant girl's word over a Grand Vizier's. But you are the Alpha King. Your word carries against his." Kasra looked at her, soot-streaked sky behind her, sapphire blazing blue in her hand, gray servant's wool hanging from shoulders that had never stopped carrying a crown she refused to claim, and felt his wolf finally, fully surrender. "Then let them see you," he said. "Let them see exactly who you are. Farhad's men struck the servants' quarters first, expecting to find a frightened girl easily silenced. They found nothing. Kasra had already moved her. By the time Farhad reached the throne room, torch in hand, private guard at his back, intending to present a fabricated confession implicating the servant girl in treasonous impersonation of the dead royal line, he found the Alpha King already seated upon the throne, and beside him, in borrowed royal blue silk, the sapphire pendant blazing openly at her throat, stood Roshanak of House Mehr. "You," Farhad breathed. "Me," she said, and her voice did not shake. "The girl you left for dead in a burning courtyard 11 years ago, Vizier. Did you never wonder if I survived? Or did you simply pray hard enough that no one would ask?" "This is madness," Farhad said, turning to the assembled council, guards, and nobles who had rushed into the hall at the commotion. "A servant girl's delusion, my king. Surely you—" "I've seen the pendant," Kasra said, rising. "I've seen the letter you burned. Yes, Vizier, my men found the ash in your private chamber before you ever reached this hall, along with the ledgers detailing every estate you seized from House Mehr's fallen lands under false pretense of extinction." The color drained from Farhad's face. "You sold her family to the raiders who burned Mehrabad," Kasra continued, voice carrying through the hall like a verdict already written. "You told two kings, mine and hers, that the bloodline was extinguished, and you built your fortune on their graves. Tell me, Vizier, was it worth it, watching a child you failed to kill become the very thing that undoes you?" Farhad's hand moved to the dagger at his belt, a last, desperate motion of a cornered man. "If the bloodline is exposed, the treaties collapse, the estates revert, and I am nothing. I will not become nothing." He lunged, not at Kasra, but at Roshanak, the true threat, the living proof. Kasra moved faster than thought, faster than fear, shifting mid-stride into the great gray wolf his enemies whispered about in terror, and struck Farhad down before the blade ever crossed half the distance between them. The vizier hit the marble floor and did not rise. Guards loyal to the crown, men who had served the throne, not the vizier's private ambitions, surrounded him within seconds, weapons drawn, waiting for the king's word. Kasra shifted back, breathing hard, and turned to find Roshanak standing exactly where he'd left her, unshaken, spine straight, every inch the princess she had spent 11 years refusing to be. "Take him to the council dungeons," Kasra said. "He will answer for regicide, for treason, and for 11 years of stolen inheritance, in a trial the entire kingdom will witness." 3 days later, the Hall of Fire Lamps filled again, not for a betrothal, not for a punishment, but for a reckoning the entire kingdom had been waiting 11 years to witness without knowing it. Farhad's trial had been swift, his ledgers, his burned letters remains reconstructed by royal scribes, the testimony of servants who had feared him too long to speak until a princess gave them courage. All of it converged into a single, undeniable truth. He was stripped of his title, his lands returned to the throne, his life spared only by the mercy of a king who had learned, from the woman beside him, that strength and cruelty were not the same thing. But it was not the trial the court would remember, it was what came after. Kasra stood before his full council, his lords, his people, nobles who had once watched him publicly choose a servant girl over their daughters, now watching him choose something far more dangerous, the truth. 11 years ago, he said, this kingdom was told that House Mehr had ended in fire. I stand before you to say that was a lie built to protect a traitor's fortune. The last daughter of that house did not die. She has walked among us in service and silence, protecting a secret that should never have been hers to carry alone. He turned. Roshanak stepped forward from beside the throne, no longer in gray wool, no longer in borrowed silk, but in deep sapphire robes stitched with the simorgh in threads of gold. Robes the royal seamstresses had worked through 3 sleepless nights to complete. I do not stand before you today, Kasra said, as a king reclaiming a lost bloodline for political convenience. I stand before you as a man who fell in love with a servant girl who refused to kneel, long before I knew she carried a crown beneath her silence. I would have chosen her if she had been nothing. I choose her now, knowing she is everything. He knelt, the Alpha King of Ashkevan, before his entire court, knelt before Roshanak of House Mehr, not as a ruler asserting dominance, but as a man surrendering the last wall around his heart. I once believed a king could not afford to love, he said, only for her now, though the whole hall heard it. I was wrong. I cannot afford not to love you. Marry me, Roshanak, not because your bloodline needs my protection, and not because mine needs your legitimacy. Marry me because I am tired of being a king with no one beside him who sees the man underneath the crown. Roshanak, who had spent 11 years believing love was a luxury the last of her line could never claim, who had knelt to no one since the night her father died, who had built her entire survival on the vow that no one would ever know her name, felt that vow shatter completely, gladly, in front of the only audience that had ever mattered. I spent 11 years hiding so no one would find me, she said, voice breaking with joy instead of grief. I don't want to hide anymore. Then don't, he said. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Kasra, I will marry you. The hall erupted, not in scandal this time, but in something that sounded unmistakably like relief. Like a kingdom exhaling a breath it had held for 11 long years. Spring came to Ashkevan the way it always had, roses unfurling along the palace walls, the fountains singing beneath a sky washed clean of winter dust. But the courtyard where a servant girl once knelt to tend a wounded falcon now held a different scene entirely. Roshanak stood at the same fountain, sapphire pendant glinting openly at her throat, for the first time without fear, no longer a secret, pressed beneath gray wool, but a crown worn proudly beside the man who had chosen her twice, once believing she was nothing, and once knowing she was everything. Kasra found her there, as he always seemed to, drawn by something in his wolf that had never stopped recognizing her, even in the days he didn't understand why. The council still argues about protocol, he said, coming to stand beside her. Some insist a queen consort cannot also hold her own royal house's title. Let them argue, Roshanak said, smiling. I've survived worse councils than this one, he laughed, a rare, unguarded sound he had learned to give freely only since she'd entered his life, and drew her against him, chin resting against her hair, watching the same water catch the same light it had the night he first noticed a servant's hand rise unconsciously to a hidden pendant. I used to believe love was the one thing a king could never survive, he murmured. And now? Now I believe it's the only thing worth surviving for. Once, she had hidden from an entire kingdom so it would never discover who she truly was. Now the kingdom bowed before her, and the only man she had ever feared loving stood, unshaken, beside her, exactly where he intended to remain for the rest of both their long, wolf-bound lives.